Hey everybody, Pastor Jay here. Another Scripture Saturday. We're looking at 1 John chapter 2, verses 3 to 14. What does it mean to live as a forgiven child of God? And our circles were all about sin and grace, law and gospel. And every sermon you ever go and hear, every Bible study that you participate in, that's a recurring message. This is where you were. This is where Jesus was. This is what you did. This is what Jesus did for you. This is who you are now in Jesus. And that's 110% wonderful and beautiful. But we have to be reminded of something that Luther said because it's reflective of what Scripture says. Luther says faith alone is what saves you, but faith is never alone. And what he meant by that is the idea that faith receives all the atoning work of Jesus free of charge and then gives it to you. You receive that by faith. But it doesn't stay there. That the reformation of you, the reforming of you, also means that you're growing in your faith and in your status as a forgiven child of God. And one of the ways that that manifests itself is how you interact with other people. And that is by love. John talks about how the person who says they know God but yet doesn't do what he says is a liar. And he uses words like what he says, what he commands, and then the word in that entire section. And what he's getting at is the idea that Christ said all of the law hangs on these two commands: love God and love your neighbor. That's not a difficult task, and yet the reason why it often appears difficult is because of what the scriptures say the biggest hang-up of sin is, which is a perversion of order. God calls us to love him first and love others, and we are to love ourselves, but it's never at the expense of others, and too often that's what we do. We sacrifice love of God and love for others in order to cater to love of self. And God's specific instruction as his people is to love other people. Specifically, your other Christian brothers and sisters in the faith. Because if you can't love them, people that have a renewed identity just like you, people who are forgiven, people who are covered in the atoning sacrifice of Jesus, if you find it difficult to love them, how are you ever going to love people that are going to persecute you? And that's what he calls us to do too. But here in this specific context, he's talking about loving your brother. And that's sometimes hard for us. It doesn't mean that we have to sit there and hang out with every single person in the church. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you have to adopt something in common with everybody there so that you are relatable to everybody there. What it means is that you generally are defined by love. It doesn't mean you have to be like somebody that just shot up a bunch of caffeine and are fully energized, and that's how you are with everybody. It just means to love them, to put them before yourself, to be gentle with them, respectful to them, listen to them, be compassionate to them, tell them the truth, support them, encourage them, advise them, help them, all of those things which are rooted in love. And I think the reason why we struggle with that is because of the consumer mentality in which we often approach Christ and church. How many of us just show up to church 5 to 10 minutes before it starts? You get your bulletin, you sit down, you listen to the service, you get up and you leave. There's more for that. There's more than that. You go to a building like this one here. This is not the church. This is where we worship as the church. That the people that you sit around are the church, living stones just like you. And loving them means actually having to associate with some of them, to talk to them, and not just the ones like that you grew up alongside for 15 to 20 years, but other ones, people you don't even know. And not saying, oh, look, there's a stranger here, I don't know them, let me go get one of the other pastors or one of the other teachers or somebody else and they can talk to them. No, it means talking to people, because what you might find out is that God has brought that person there for you to be a blessing to, or for them to be a blessing to you. That's what love is all about. It's other focused, not me focused. That's the nature of the gospel. God has always been other focused. That's why we heard in worship a few weeks ago when Pastor Holtz read from Romans that Christ died for us while we were still sinners. And as other focused, we love other people in the same way that Jesus loved us. We don't just come to worship to get. We come to worship to offer to God and to give to other people. To love them as ourselves and to show that love by taking an interest. That's what it means. When we go to heaven, we're not going to have our own individual area where we're so overwhelmed with people that we go on the left side of heaven in the back pew. We are going to be with the church, all people. And so, if that's going to be our reality when we get to heaven, why not express and enjoy that reality on this side of it until we're there? If you are his disciples, obey his commands. That's what John says. And the commands are simple. They're not hard. Love. And it's not the ooey gooey mushy kind of love that like grandma that comes and pinches the cheeks, or dad that just picks you up in a bear hug. It can be, but it's not just that. It's being focused on someone else. Consider what their needs are, what their hurts are, what their life is, and being a blessing to them because you care, just like Jesus did for you and for me. We'll see you next week, friends. Have a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving.